You can feel it. That drive to take what you have and launch it to the next level. To harness your creativity, give it form, and set off on your own adventure. To hand the world life-changing technology and green living innovations. Transform business and redefine how the world works. So be hands-on, make it real, because people like you will forge what's next.
Hello, what a warm and wonderful night. My name is Professor Wendy Steele, and on behalf of RMIT University, the College of Design and Social Context, RMIT Culture, and the Planetary Civics Inquiry Alliance, I warmly welcome you to this very special night, where we're privileged to hear from two extraordinary women, Rosi Braidotti and Patricia Piccinini, who even before they met, shared an entangled planetary scale story. So both are leading giants, rock stars in their respective fields of philosophy and art. Both are interested and passionate about embodiment, the politics of diversity, feminism, anti-racism, and what it means to be human, inhuman, post-human, but most importantly, humane. Both are Northern Italian-born Australians and proud Melburnians, and both emigrated to Australia at a very young age and grew up in inner city neighbourhoods. So it's just really fitting, it's even poetic from a post-human perspective that this event is held here at the beautiful Capitol Theatre and will be simultaneously live streamed around the world for the Planetary Civics launch across a 24-hour time frame across multiple time zones. But importantly, it's here grounded on sacred and ancient lands of the Woiwurrung and Bunurong language groups of the Eastern Kulin nations, which have never been ceded. And so to start the evening's proceedings, we're really honoured to have Wurundjeri Woiwurrung Elder Uncle Bill Nicholson, who will give the welcome to country. Uncle Bill is deeply committed to advocating for the rights of contemporary Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people to access and practice culture on traditional country, and was one of the first Victorian delegates nominated to attend the First Peoples Assembly, which resulted in the Uluru Statement from the Heart. So please, Uncle Bill.
Thank you, Wendy, for your very kind introduction. I always like to thank the very hard organisers behind events and gatherings here on Wurundjeri country, and their forethought and respect in incorporating a traditional owner, elder of this land, to conduct a welcome to country, whether it's in a speech like tonight or in a ceremony. To give you a little bit of an insight of what a welcome to country is, I guess in a contemporary way of explaining it, it's a formal ceremonial process that allows people to feel culturally safe to conduct their business on our land. And not too far from here, actually, at a place called Turak, which is a section of the Botanical Gardens. These ceremonies occurred in many other places within the Melbourne region and beyond. The ceremony, we call it Tandaram or Nagji, and obviously in English we call it Welcome to Country. So keep that in mind because it's a real key part of feeling truly welcome, which I'll share again at the end of the welcome speech. Culture, you know, we've got many different cultures from around the world on Wurundjeri lands these days. I could pretty much say just about the whole world is represented in some form or another. Australia as itself was very multicultural before the English arrived, over 275 different language groups and over 3,000 different family and clan groups. Our language is called Woiwurrung, and to me, the basis of culture is language. It's how we express everything and how we learn everything. We did take a big hit on our culture back in 1863 at the mission station called Corranderk. So people might have heard of Healesville, or about 80 kilometres that way if you're not local. We weren't allowed to speak our language, and I don't like to say it's a lost one. I like to say it's still there, and we're trying to reconnect, and I'd like to share a little bit with you this evening. So, Waminjika, Gabamala Mangil, Banabunyalambu Warranjeri Balak, Nirana Bill Nicholson. I welcome you here for a reason and purpose and a very intellectual discussion about country and where we're heading as people tonight. I greet you and good day from the Wurundjeri people. My name's Uncle Bill Nicholson. I stand here very proudly as an elder of my community, something I had to earn. It wasn't just handed to me. I was the youngest elder of 33, so I got 32 older peers that gave me the right to speak on behalf of my community. And I was fortunate enough to learn my story at a reasonably younger age, and to be honest, it wasn't in the education systems. They didn't teach it. I learnt it outside of the education systems. And what I did find was I come from a very long line of amazing individuals, my elders past, with their strength, resilience and wisdom that allowed me to stand here tonight, my family and my community to be here in the modern community of Melbourne. I also found that it did test my emotions, both anger and sadness, but it also gave me inspiration, and that's part of my role that I've taken on at Wurundjeri, actually, to share our story to people that want to hear it. This great city of Melbourne with over 5 million people, my motto is, there's not anyone out there that can't hear our story. We are the last sole surviving sovereign clan of the Birrarung, the Yarra as it's now known. Saying that, it is a bit of a sad connotation because it means there was other family groups and clans that were here for generations, but no longer. So I'd like to acknowledge them so they're not forgotten. I'd also like to extend that acknowledgement to community leaders here today. From a cultural perspective, Aboriginal cultural leadership was all based on humility. Environmental leaders here today, Aboriginal people, if you ever engage with our community and our people, we always talk about country. Country relates to our health both today and our health and our legacy that we leave for our future generations. And also cultural leaders here today. Generally, I like to make people feel culturally safe on Wurundjeri land to share your stories. The more stories that are shared, the more listening occurs, and the more listening, I believe respect is built through truthful and respectful listening, and that builds what we call in language Jindiwarabak Balak, which is unity within the community. Concerning cultural responsibility, for thousands of years when people called this place their home, that they knew that they were taught responsibility to both country and to each other, and I like to share that responsibility to people who call this place their home today and also visit this land. Concerning the past, let's try our very best to learn from our mistakes of the past. Australia was built on racial discrimination back in 1901 at its federation. I don't believe that's who we are today, but the residue still does exist. We feel it all the time. So let's try our very best to eradicate that mindset once and for all, because a healthy country really doesn't work without a healthy social or healthy community within that country. The Welcome to Country ceremony is a law ceremony, which means you had to do it. In a modern context, it's like a passport. Many aspects to it. But a key part of it actually, which I obviously won't be doing tonight, is the smoking ceremony, because it means I've got a lot of fire. But to feel truly welcome to this land, the ceremony of cleansing both Murat Balak, the spirit of people, the energy of yourselves, and Murat Biik, which is the spirit of the land. And in our culture, they're interconnected and cannot be broken. And to feel truly welcome to this land, respect of the people, the land and the culture is our sovereign law, which was never ceded. So, like I said at the very start of the welcome, I feel that respect. So on behalf of myself and my community and my ancestors, Waminjika Warranjeri Bik, I welcome Wurundjeri country to you all. And I know you will really enjoy the discussion tonight. So, Nun Gudjin, thank you.
Thank you so much, Uncle Bill Nicholson. Central to planetary civics is a reckoning with planetary scale entanglements, and this means related questions of sovereignty, security, and collective practices of care in what we know is an increasingly and deeply wounded world. So tonight's conversation, the first time ever in the world that they've come together in this public way between artist and philosopher, is hosted by the Planetary Civics Inquiry, which was founded by RMIT, Dark Matter Labs, Politics for Tomorrow, and the Rhode Island Design School Centre for Complexity, all committed to actively and creatively engaging with a future that is governed by principles of shared planetary stewardship and a radical civics. And our thanks now to Michael Kallela and VC fellow Dr. Sarah Barnes from Studio ESEM for developing the following short video to visualise some of these activities for you.
I would argue we're living in a 1 in a 400-year cycle of transformation, where our theory of seeing the world through silos and objects and individual discrete things is being challenged by seeing the world in relationship to.
They're contaminating our water, polluting our air.
What I am interested in is applying in a specific empirical way, as a materialist, critical posthumanist, the space of the city as a unit of reference to try to figure out how we deal with what I call the convergence of crises, which I prefer to define as challenges.
Earth is all we've got, and we have no right to plunder it.
Some of it is becoming more and more machinic.
Any polymer that's made into something functional is a plastic.
You know, song rhymes, there's no story, there's no dance, no song.
We live as a planetary relationship with each other. And we're already living in a planetary cycle. Unfortunately, most of that planetary cycle is extractive. Most of that planetary cycle is extractive and asymmetric. But the reality is we're already a planetary species. We're already there.
To ask Professor Tim Marshall, RMIT Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Design and Social Context and Vice President, to say a few words. Tim is a champion of transdisciplinary approaches. He's passionate about action on climate change, about biodiversity, about inclusion, the role of technology and the academic mission. As a founder of the Planetary Civics Inquiry, he's ideally placed to launch tonight's event formally. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you, Uncle Bill Nicholson, for that wonderful and very generous welcome to country. And hello, everyone here. It's great to see you. And can I say at the outset that many of the concepts that will be discussed here tonight and that underpin the Planetary Civics Inquiry are ones that the first peoples of this country, alongside many other indigenous peoples around the planet, have practiced for millennia. And we are in some respects returning to these foundational ways of knowing that are now being brought forward into partnership with knowledge forms and technologies operating at a planetary scale. And of course, this must be undertaken with the greatest respect of First Nations people, understanding also the very real power imbalances that exist in our relationships. It's a great pleasure to be here with you this evening, and I'm sure that you're as eager as I am to hear from Professors Rosi Braidotti and Patricia Piccinini shortly. As Wendy mentioned, this event is presented as part of the Planetary Civics Inquiry, an initiative which brings together local and international researchers, creative practitioners, and industry professionals, all united by the goal to shift thinking, practice, and public policy in order to better represent not only the sovereign, but also the intrinsic and inescapable point that our very existence is now deeply bound up in and has consequences for the planetary. We use the term planetary explicitly to distinguish from the concept of the global. Global references a world of bounded territories and extensions of the nation state. While we are all clearly still grappling with the effects of a planet defined by the global, The term planetary invites us to think beyond sovereignty and to invoke the indivisible relationship between the human, the more than human, and the natural world. That effort must be collective. It takes an alliance of many people, many, as Professor Braidotti puts it, embodied brains and embrained bodies, to learn, to think, and to act differently. To this end, the Planetary Civics Inquiry is dedicated to designing and facilitating a comprehensive collection of ideas, evidence, and frameworks to set new agendas. By way of illustration, RMIT's School of Fashion and Textiles is working on circular and regenerative approaches to highly complex clothing supply chains. And while we think of these as global supply chains, they're actually best understood, we would suggest, as planetary. There are so many actors or forms of human and non-human agency, and these forms of agency are distributed across all the sectors that constitute that industry. Agribusiness and mining, textile mills and clothing factories, import-export firms, retail and transport companies, all of which are in multiple locations along production to consumption to disposal cycle. Together, this system drives migrations, low subsistence wages, child labour, as well as massive dumping of landfill and seafill, where the chemical residue persists at geological and therefore planetary timescales. The implications of this distributed network of human and non-human forms of agency are not merely global, meaning stitched together across nation states. It includes governments, companies, NGOs, traders, designers, data centers, automated systems, media platforms, algorithms, and so on. So as Professor Alice Payne, who is leading this research, has shown, a sustainable fashion industry would require us to purchase a maximum of 5 items of clothing per year. Well, that's fine, but Alice's work is indeed predicated on the point that were we to only do that, the loss of employment across this network would be devastating to livelihoods, such that this in itself would incite increasing migrations, economic immiseration, and even more radical political movements. And it is just such complex dilemmas that the Alliance is committed to addressing. The Planetary Civics Inquiry originated in 2023 as a partnership between RMIT and Dark Matter Labs, based in London, and has since grown to include, as you heard from Wendy, the German think tank Politics for Tomorrow and RISD. Over the next 24 hours, we'll be holding events for this launch across several time zones. And so please tune in if you want to learn more, and I'm sure you've all seen the QR code for that. Planetary Civics Inquiry is one of the many ways that the College of Design and Social Contexts is contributing to RMIT's overarching Regenerative Futures ambition, one which harnesses the scale, capabilities, and interdisciplinary nature of the university to make meaningful progress towards a future where both people and the planet flourish. Which leads us perfectly to this evening's event. 2 brilliant creative minds, both experts in their fields. I can think of no better way to begin this year's Planetary Civics Inquiry events than with Rosi and Patricia discussing their unique perspectives on these issues. And we are very honoured that Rosi Braidotti is a professor at RMIT. She joined us a bit over a year ago and has just completed her 2nd post-human summer lab. And I'm also absolutely delighted to announce that Patricia Piccinini has joined RMIT as a professor of practice. And I think this evening's presentation will help clarify the urgent need to posit ourselves as intertwined with, rather than reigning over, the life of the planet. Just this afternoon, Professor Gary Thomas, RMIT's Pro-Vice Chancellor of Indigenous Education, Research and Engagement, put it perfectly in a meeting where he said that the agenda, one of the agendas here is that we all become great ancestors. And so now I'll hand you back to Wendy to further introduce Patricia and Rosi and to get us underway. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Tim. And now we're on to bringing out Patricia and Rosi. It's kind of a cliche to say they need no introduction, but I am going to read a couple of short sentences about them. Rosi Braidotti is a feminist continental philosopher. She's a distinguished university professor emerita at Utrecht University in the Netherlands and an honorary professor at the Royal at RMIT. She holds degrees in philosophy from ANU and the Sorbonne, and in 2022 received the Humboldt Research Award for lifelong contribution to scholarship. And throughout her work, she asserts and demonstrates, and we've seen this in her time with us in Melbourne just recently, the importance of combining theoretical concerns with a serious commitment to producing socially and politically relevant scholarship that contributes to making a difference in the world. And the way she does it is joyful, and you will see that yourself. Patricia Piccinini is one of Australia's most acclaimed contemporary artists and now Professor of Practice at RMIT University. She is best known for her hybrid figurative sculptures rendered in silicone and hair. She was Australia's representative at the 2003 Venice Biennale, and since the early 1990s, her practice, surreal drawings, hybrid animals, vehicular creatures have questioned the way contemporary technology and culture changes our understandings of what it means to be human. She wonders at our relationships with and our responsibilities to all of the creatures that surround us. While ethics are central in her work, her approach is ambiguous and, what I particularly love, both gentle and questioning. So please give a very warm welcome to Rosi, who is going to come out first to kickstart their conversation, and then she'll hand over to Patricia. So a warm welcome for Rosi Braidotti. Thanks, everyone.
Wow, thank you for being here. Good evening, everyone. And the people online, millions listening to us tonight. Great honor, pleasure to be here, sharing the stage with Patricia to try to reflect together in not too boring a fashion about the great challenges confronting us earthlings, the inhabitants of this planet at this particular point in time. Changes which are not utopian and to come, but right here, very active under our very eyes. They're shaping the world that we're living in, framed by very complex, intersecting phenomena that fascinate both Patricia and me. Fast technological advances, but even faster environmental degradation, widening socioeconomic disparities, inequalities, discriminations. We're caught in a beautiful place between the fourth industrial revolution and the sixth extinction. Hang in there. It's not to be depressed, but let's think about it. Just to keep things simple, I call this the posthuman convergence, and I wrote a trilogy about it because that's what we academics do. And although the changes are daunting in terms of speed and scale, they are not beyond the realm of the thinkable. We can think about them adequately if we put our heads together, lots of sharp heads here tonight and online. And in spite of the high levels of anxiety that these transformations on a planetary scale are inducing, they need not lead us into depression. I think that Patricia and I share a profoundly affirmative approach to these matters, and we want to infuse some of this positive energy into the presentation of tonight. We believe that given the speed and scale of the great planetary changes that are happening around and within us, we need to pay more attention to what binds us together, to the knowledge, the values, the basic units of reference that can redefine our being earthlings and subjects of this particular moment in history, in space and time. What unit of reference do we use to define a new type of shared humanity with algorithms, with water shortages, with increasing disparities, but also with enormous opportunities emerging from the very same historical condition? What is the most adequate manner, the best terminology to describe our interconnections between humans, non-human, less than human, otherwise human, the technological, the environmental, the socioeconomic dimensions intersecting, constituting the fundamental ecologies that shape our existence? Aboriginal philosophies have been thinking about these lines of thought for centuries, and they have a great deal to teach us about what we call, in our Cartesian sort of solipsism, the nature-culture continuum, the necessity to move beyond the nature-culture continuum. Most cultures on Earth have been beyond that for centuries, so maybe time to learn about the binding force of the Earth and its celestial dome. Yes, think we must. And some of our task tonight is to make, for all of you, but especially the young ones, hoping the some are here and online, just to convince you how sexy, how cool thinking is. Think. Wow. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. Mindful of the fact also that so much of our thinking is a matter of habits. We hope to convince you that we need to make a little effort to think otherwise, to think harder. The predicament we're in provokes, stimulates, irritates a bit, but pushes us to think further. I have argued, for instance, that we need to look critically at some of the exclusionary aspects of the great humanistic tradition, namely its Eurocentric, colonialist, ableist, sexist bias, to mention just a few. Maybe the man of the European Renaissance is not the universal measure of all things. Maybe there is more diversity out there, maybe. But we need to think even further and not restrict our critical gaze only to anthropomorphic elements, humanoids. We need to take in and take on the non-humans, the hybrids, the otherwise human, that which is other than the human. We need a critique of anthropocentrism, human exceptionalism. We need to think differently. We need to look at difference differently, and this will be one of the big topics of tonight. And in order to do this, we need the power of the imagination as well as the tools of reasoned discourse. Quite a task, but we can do it, so rest assured. So that's the conclusion already of the night. Let me illustrate the shift of mindset that is required in response to this post-human planetary condition by referring to a very well-known image that is almost the first iconic representation of our planet, classical, taken in '72 by the crew of the final Apollo mission, Apollo 17, as they travel towards their lunar landing mission. It has become almost the emblem of our common earthly home and has been deployed in a myriad of ways, also in advertising and PR, as the symbol of a new pan-humanity, which some people applaud of as a new form of togetherness, and others criticize as a lukewarm form of corporate humanism, the earth as a brand or trademark. Yeah, always a spoil sport, aren't they? But let's take it as our blue icon. But to tell you the whole truth, things are not as blue and as radiant as they may look, because as early as '79, NASA began a different project, began the orbital debris program to clear the millions of items of debris, rubbish, which are currently in orbit around our planet. Please remember that we humans have been going to space since the 1950s, and that the Soviet Russians got there first, just incidentally, just to irritate the Americans. So a lot of orbital rubbish has gone up since then. Moreover, NASA has also estimated that at this moment, before the first human colony opens on the moon, scheduled for later this year, early next year, there are already over 200 tons of human garbage littering the surface of the moon, mostly from previous space exploration, including moon buggies, an all-American flag, golf balls, all kinds of things. The phenomenon is so serious that it is known as the lunar Anthropocene. So this rubbish from outer space is due to increase as a result of the new space race. 80% of current NASA space exploration has been outsourced to private companies owned by the big tech giants, mostly Elon Musk's SpaceX. So the type of equipment and debris that is going up into space is actually scheduled to increase. So the blue planet today needs to be amended and updated, and a real space, a real image of the space that surrounds the Earth looks like this, a wounded, littered, fragile entity struggling to find some metastability. Planet Earth encapsulate the contradictions, the tensions of this post-human planetary predicament, the technological, the environmental, the socioeconomic intersecting to create a planet that is blue, but maybe in a different manner. Maybe it has the blues, and it requires a different type of knowledge and care. I think the well-being of the Earthlings needs to be framed by a non-depressing and non-depressed understanding that these are the conditions that we are actually living in. No room for despair, but a great need to think critically, creatively about the multidimensional changes that are happening around us. And in a world where climate change is being denied, science is being rubbished, universities are being defunded, we also need to understand loud and clear that knowledge is healing, that adequate understanding is sanity, the truth is the greatest means to detox from lies, approximations, and manipulations of all kinds. Think we must. And then, after we have agreed on some basic mappings of where we are at, we need to resist the pull of fear and despair, cultivating together an affirmative approach. Affirmation is not carefree, it is careful. It is a practice, the collective labor of constructing shareable, workable representations of the current predicaments that allow us to embrace the contradiction of our times and sustain their pressures. We, therefore, have to call upon our brains and our hearts to create social horizons of hope, to exercise ethical and epistemological care for living matter, which comes in all kinds of shapes, most of them non-human. We have a duty to care. That's the point of encounter between Piccinini and Braidotti for tonight. Care for the well-being of this planet, which is not one element among others, but it is that which brings them all together in geological terrestrial terms, but also in hydrological, meteorological, atmospheric, socioeconomic, and of course, technologically mediated ways. The Earth as Gaia, living matter, invites us to embrace the radical immanence of becoming earthly, the planetary subject of this particular planet, of this particular moment. What binds us together is the shared ecologies of belonging that ground our existence, environmental, technological, socioeconomic, and through it all, affective. We are in this together. We Western humans cannot be united only by economics. We are not together because we are all here and we're all going shopping, although, an idea. We cannot be reduced only to a mass of consumer-minded humanoids. We need something more complex than corporate humanism. We need a qualitative leap towards values of care, compassion, empathy for both the human and non-humans and the otherwise human inhabitants of this planet at this hour. Nor can we be bonded only by fear and vulnerability. There are big issues, being vulnerable, big time. We have all watched over the last few years as a wounded humanity has had to come to terms with health emergencies, floods, bushfires, and new wars. Confronted with these disasters, of course, we're in this together. But the common denominator in redefining this togetherness has to be more than a reaction to the collectively shared anxieties about our mortality. Because the point is that we may well be in these predicaments together, but we are not one and the same. We differ tremendously as embodied, embedded individual in terms of access to the technology, exposures to the environmental degradation, and in socioeconomic terms. The acknowledgement of diversity does not threaten our unity, does not condemn us to endless fragmentation or free fall into the relativism of differences. It points to a need of generating new grounds to get together, new middle grounds, new milieus which express the sense of being planetary individuals, earthlings at this point in time. Technologically connected and yet divided, we need to work together to make our embodied differences actually activate new ways of creating binding ties, constructing trust and a sense of shared intimacy with the world, a sense of belonging, again, anew together. Because we are in this great planetary challenge together, as such awareness combined with the sensibility to the differences and the diversities of our locations needs to be the motor for our rethinking, the potentially contradictory multiple ways in which a new planetary humanity is being recomposed right now. There are multiple ways of becoming earthlings and planetary, multiple ways of becoming world together to embrace our embodied, embedded differences. We need affirmative, empowering, empathic, joyful, clever ways of actually rethinking the interconnection, going through difficult reality checks without sinking into negativism or apathy or despair. We need to be grounded and flowing, creative and critical. We need to be great, but hey, this is Melbourne, we can do this. And this is the point where that project and that of Patricia Piccinini intersect in trying to construct this space and make it a horizon of communal practice to engender different new affirmative ways of becoming earthlings, becoming new planetary subjects. With Patricia, we have identified 3 zones of encounter for tonight. And the first one that we will be open in a second by Patricia is the affirmative recomposition of humanity as a hybrid, mutant, technological mediated entity. Piccinini's work challenges us to review our preconceived ideas about the human and socially enforced relationships to the otherwise human, mutant, monstrous, hybrid others. And this critical process of rethinking our humanities actually revives a cultural, visual, artistic repertoires that challenges our mental habits. You know Patricia, she needs an introduction, but she's a little bit daunted by your invisible, strong presence tonight. Make her feel really loved. Piccinini's here. You're right.
Wow, that was an amazingly cogent and succinct overview of what faces us in the contemporary world. Thank you. I'll be honest, I have actually been quite nervous about this talk. It's not often that I get to stand next to someone who has been so influential in shaping my understanding of the contemporary world and the life that we lead within it. It is thinkers like Rosi, but especially Rosi, who has been instrumental in formulating and mapping the world of the post-human and the Anthropocene, which is the world where my work lives. Her way of seeing and understanding this world and our place in it has been absolutely crucial in shaping the way that I make art and the stories that I try to tell. And so I'm enormously honoured to have Rosi here to talk about this world with me and also offer her insights into the work that I make. I wish I could articulate similar insights into her work in return, but, you know, let's be honest, nobody talks better about it than she does. So I guess I'm just going to let my work speak. And I'm going to start off with a lovely work that I love. Well, I love them all, actually, The Young Family. But they live in Bendigo. Hybridity has always featured in my work. And here we have a chimera. A chimera is a creature that's been made from different animals. It's a Greek word. And there are lots of chimeras in Greek philosophy, like Medusa and the Minotaur. It's also a word used by science as well. So in biology, in genetics, It's an organism whose cells have derived from 2 or more different zygotes. So it's a very useful word. I love this word. And it describes this creature, who is a mother. She's part pig, she's part dog, she's part human. She's on this bed, which is kind of technologically oriented, but it adds, but it sort of owes a lot to the interior design of luxury cars as well. And I just wanted to show this next slide right at the beginning, because when I saw this, it kind of blew me away. It's the oldest sculpture that we have, that we know, that's been made by humans. And it's not a sculpture of a lion or a human, it's a sculpture of a chimera. And when I just saw this, I thought, I'm just part of this continuum. They started it, and I'm still doing it. And maybe they had a different relationship to nature, where chimeras just seemed something that seemed normal to them. And it must have been important to them, because apparently it took thousands of hours to make. It's made out of teeth of mammoths, ivory of mammoths. Amazing. And so the other thing I wanted to say was the idea of a chimera, it's not so weird when we think about that. Most people, or a lot of people, have 1 to 2% of their DNA belonging to Neanderthals. And I was amazed and happy to know that I am especially a chimera, because when the 2 children that I grew in my body were inside of me, cells from their bodies travelled up through the placenta and lodged inside of me, and they're still there. So I'm a chimera as well. Ideas about purity and things like that really don't matter to me. I don't get that. It doesn't figure with me at all. And so this work is about xenotransplantation, and that is the process of growing human organs in other species that have had their genetic makeup changed, so that when they grow an organ and you give it to the human won't reject it because it's made of their own genetic material. And when they were born in 2002, a lot of people were very resistant to them, and they were kind of slightly outraged. They thought, what, is this the stuff of art? Isn't it science fiction? And then in 2005, Ishiguro wrote that book, Never Let Me Go, which was a real artwork, because for the first half of the book, we just get to know those kids, those teenagers that are going to be cut up at the end. And we realise that they're just like ordinary teenagers. They just care about like who's going out with who and like where they come from. And it makes it all the harder when at the end they have to accept their fate and give up their bodies for others. In 2024, Richard Slayman, and here he is, he received the first kidney grown in a pig, a chimera pig that had his genetic material. That's amazing. He lived for 2 months. This work is about dichotomies. It's about how dichotomies like the natural and the artificial, the human and the animal, are being challenged now. They're porous, they're fluid. We see here a mother considering her lot. She's obviously sentient. She's wise and knowing. She's sagacious. And she's vulnerable. She hasn't got any clothes on, and she's breastfeeding. And if you're a mother, or if you were mothered, or if you just care about people, you empathise with her. What's going to happen to those kids? We feel for her. We feel for all of them. But what if your own child needed a replacement heart? And I've come to understand that that's really not uncommon. What happens if your own child needed a new heart or a new kidney? Would you sacrifice her child for yours? And that is the point of this work. And I'll tell you what I'd say. I'd say, yes, I would do that. Because I'm human. And I just want my child to live. And I'd do anything to keep them alive. And I don't like it. And it's very ethically complex. And it's very emotional. But that's okay, because these decisions around how we understand species and the distinctions between us and what's natural and artificial, it's always going to be emotional. It's never going to be rational. And the reason why we can have hybridity is because we have genetic continuity across different species. And xenotransplantation only works because we are all genetically connected. Now, I've read this a billion times, I've heard it, I've seen stuff about it, but I never ever internalized that idea until quite recently. Because I thought, wow, we really, really are all made of the same stuff. We really, really are connected. Now, we are connected to yeast. It's amazing. Everything on this planet is connected. And so perhaps we should think twice about disconnecting ourselves from the responsibilities towards other species, especially if we depend on them to make our lives better. The next work I'm going to talk about is called The Balance, and it's in amongst celestial fields. Now, with the young family, that's a world where the natural is becoming increasingly technological. And we're going to go through a biotech boom. Like, we're just at the cusp of it, I think. It's like so many good things are coming our way. And a lot of change is going to happen, good and bad. But this world is a technological world that is increasingly natural to us. Like, it's exactly the same thing, but it's the converse. And sometimes people wonder, and they ask, is this the same artist? Like they seem really different. And for me, they aren't different because they're kind of conceptual works. They're about the same idea. They're about that distinction between the natural and the artificial and how that shifts and what it means to us. But let me tell you how I came to this work. I was looking at deers. I look a lot at nature. I'm a real nature lover. And I really, really admire all the diversity on our planet, but I really like stags. I think I saw some, and they're just so majestic. And at the same time, I was looking at scooters and motorini and Vespas, because I also like automotive things at the same time. And when I discovered what mods in the 60s did to Vespas, the customizing, the mirrors, the lights, the paint jobs, the trims, the leather trims, and when I saw them driving all together down the road, I just thought, that's a herd of deer. And they're in their natural environment. And that's how this came work came about. And what we see here is a kind of an embrace, an ambiguous embrace between a Vespa deer and a tiger motorcycle. We're not quite sure what they're doing, but they're looking into each other's faces, into each other's eyes. And it fits into a very, very long tradition of humans making pictures that define nature. We've done it, and we have thousands of examples. And here is one from 300 BC. It's a Greek one. Because this is the way that we understand ourselves as different from animals. Here's one at the NGV by George Stubbs. So what we see here is a nature that is uncivilized, it's violent, it's destructive. This is brutal nature, as opposed to civilized humanity. Because we would never kill another animal. We'd never do that. The other thing about this, it might be beautiful and it might be powerful, but it's beyond our control. And that bugs people. So getting back to this ambiguity, they're looking into each other's faces in a world where technology and nature can't be de-entangled. But it's even more nuanced than that, because we feel we can control technology. That's the definition of technology, we can control it. But these guys, they're just doing their own thing. They're not doing what we ask them to do. They've got their own, they're just doing, who knows? Are they dueling? Are they kissing? Who knows? But they're doing it. And that is new. But not so new when you think about artificial intelligence. Can we imagine a new relationship with nature in this place where these organ flowers grow like replacement organs, where there is abundance and beauty, and it's kind of regulated? So why am I so interested in this natural-artificial continuum, not dichotomy? Because the traditional dichotomy divides people away from nature. And when we do that, it's easier to destroy nature because we feel that it's not going to hurt us. And by putting nature and species on the other side, it's easier to avoid the responsibilities we have for care. Oh, here's the cleaner. She's really special because she also looks at this natural-artificial continuum, but she's got natural visceral stuff with a kind of inorganic machine thing going on, like inside the same thing. They've been brought together in the same organism. And this work was inspired by leatherback turtles. Leatherback turtles grow to be about 80 years old. They reach sexual maturity at 20. They're incredibly beautiful creatures. They're huge. And what's happening with them is that they're eating like a lot of marine life, like the shearwater birds. They're eating garbage, and they especially eat plastic bags because they look like jellyfish in the water. And so they get clogged up and they can't get nutrients, so they never reach sexual maturity, and they just don't reproduce, so they're endangered. So what can we do to help them as humans? Well, we can fit them with their own vacuum cleaner. They can clean the oceans for us. They can catch those plastic bags before they eat them. I don't really think that that's the solution, but it's kind of a way of talking about our desire for technological solutions to technological problems. And I love those solutions that we come up with. There's one I'm especially interested in, which is to put a shade over the coral reef to stop the waters from warming up. But the coral reef is as big as Japan. So, I don't know, you know what it's about? It's about the wrong answers to the right questions. It's about doing the wrong thing for the right reasons. I mean, for me, I just love her face. I just love that she exists, and just the idea that she could come together. Oh, so now we have the shoe forms. These guys are the super hybrids. Here they are at the Flinders Street Station show as part of Rising, I think in 21. And what they do is they make impossible hybridity seem conceivable. They're kind of abstract and conceptual, but they're quite figurative as well. So they look really, really fun and so on, but actually they're about this kind of incredible blending and coming together of things, seamless boundary smashing. This work was inspired by coral. And I really love coral because it's got this symbiotic relationship between the polyps and the algae that live in the tissue of the polyp. So what happens is, in this relationship, the algae convert the sun, the light energy, with water, carbon dioxide, and minerals, and they turn it into oxygen. Who doesn't want oxygen? But food for the polyps. This is a superpower. I would like algae in my body. This, I'd love to have a constant source of food, and they have it. When are we going to invent a way for us to have that? And this work is about imagining what it'd be like for a machine to grow like coral does, and what this kind of a relationship could look like. I love shoes. I love their design. I love their materiality. I love what they say about their owners. We can all tell each other, we know who we are by our shoes. It's true. I love the treads. They're abstract works of art. I love them. And so, here they are in this flower which is complete with ovaries and a kind of sandshoe stamen, because that's what flowers are. They're the reproductive organs of plants. And amazingly, they have both. They have the stamen and the ovaries. Here they are together in this beautiful, beautiful organism, which is not artificial, but it's quite natural. I love the corpse flower. I love bringing it together with a sandshoe, making it look like antlers. And I just wonder where it might live. And I wonder what creature would be attracted to it. I love mushrooms. I love mycelium. The whole world loves mycelium and psychedelics. I love what mycelium does in the forest. It takes nutrients from rocks and feeds trees, and the roots from trees feed the mycelium carbohydrates. Myceliums were the first roots of plants. We now, look, you probably already know all this, but they are the communicators in the forest. They hold the forest together. And so here they are, these mushrooms, the fruiting bodies of the mycelium with this shoe, but it's too heavy, so you have to hold it up. Oh, hold it up like this Japanese tree. I love going to Japan and seeing those really natural trees propped up by these stakes, and it doesn't matter that it's as though they're invisible, but they're really there, and it doesn't matter that they're artificial. This is their best natural self, so we just need the stakes. And so, that's a bit gratuitous. I just thought I'd put that in. Because, this plasticity of forms allows protean interchanges of shapes where the boundaries are seamless and fluid and porous. Over to you, Rosie.
You can leave it there. You can leave it there. You can leave it there. Okay? Indeed. Think we must. How about that? Piccinini invites us to reconsider some of our mental habits and the relationships to these otherwise embodied others, both anthropomorphic and non. In art history and in Western science, the monstrous, the hybrid, the other is an object of pejoration, of contempt, of fear, scary monsters and ugly things. They evoke an imaginary that we need to question again, this Frankensteinian idea that hybrids are actually dangerous, contaminated, impure, slightly fascistic imaginary, I would argue. Situating herself in a technologically continuum, nature-culture continuum, environmentally aware, socioeconomically grounded, Piccinini invites us to reflect on our relationship to creatures and entities which are hybrid because of technology. They are otherwise engineered, they're posthuman bodies to all ends and purposes in an era when technology has become our second nature. And you may say nature-culture continuum, and it, of course, easier said than done. Incredibly difficult in the language that we have inherited from Western philosophy, from culture and history, to actually move beyond dualism, binary oppositions. We think in opposite terms. And the scientists have been telling people in the humanities for a while, well, guess what? We are all recombinations of the same elementary particles. We are made of the same matter. We are variations of the same proteins. There is no actual fundamental distinctions. For people in the humanities, this is an issue. There is a problem with the view of the human that is built into what we call the academic humanities. We need to move beyond to what's a posthuman understanding that we are indeed in this together. Which takes me to the second zone of encounter. We'll be here until 9 o'clock, so just be prepared. The second zone of encounter with Piccinini, which is the positivity of difference and diversity. It is obvious that if you challenge the binaries and the dualistic oppositions, you have to reconsider the places where we have located difference. And difference, historically, in our ways of thinking, has been defined as the normality is the 0 degree of monstrosity. And that is to say, to be normal is to be the least possible different from what is accepted as the norm. So this means that we're still thinking in terms of normative models of normality. And this is what Patricia and I call the Vitruvian ideal of the European Renaissance man, also known as him. By extension, this means that any deviation from that ideal, from that norm, counts as not only as being different from, but also as being worth less than. It is a binary that actually conceals a hierarchical, exclusionary set of power relations. The stigma of pejorative difference historically in our culture has fallen on many devalorized, embodied, and embedded others. the others of this classical idea of men. They are the sexualized others, women, LGBTQ people, others, the ethnic or racialized indigenous and black others, and the naturalized or earth others, animals, plants, the planet as a whole. Piccinini's work and mine alongside invites us to think again our humanity starting from this other and to take the negativity out of difference. Patricia.
So this is Rosi's Vitruvian Man, if we hadn't seen him. Just thought he's by Leonardo. We're going to look at the supporter, and he's like another idea of a perfect person for our time. But he's not based on the Vitruvian Man, he's based on Atlas. And Atlas was given the punishment by Zeus of having the burden of holding up the earth because he was in a war with the Olympians and he lost. And yeah, that was his punishment. And he was really grumpy about it. He really did not like it. It was like it all came to a bad end. But with the supporter, we have an inversion of Atlas. This person holds up a new idea of nature. But the thing about him is that he chooses to do it. It's not a burden. And what's more, he does it in a really elegant way. He does it in this virtually impossible yoga pose. I know because I've tried it. It's impossible to do, but they do it. They have that strength to come up with this new idea of what our relationship with nature could look like. And they hold up this very strange ecology. It's kind of visceral, but it's obviously technological. It's being grown somewhere. You can see the treads of sand shoes, and it's got these kind of plateaus. It's all very ordered, but at the same time kind of bodily, I suppose, kind of organic. And it's home to these birds that are kind of familiar, but we've never seen them before. So what is that? Well, it's a metaphor for a new concept or idea of nature, as opposed to the idea that Atlas had of the earth, the burden that he had to carry. And this work all was inspired by these peregrine falcons. So during COVID, we watched them build a nest, drop the eggs, crack open, grow, take their first flight from a multi-story building. And for them, it didn't matter that it wasn't the edge of a cliff in some forest somewhere. It was business as usual. They're fiercely territorial. They don't tolerate another falcon within 2 square kilometres. That's a lot of space. And they love it in the city because there's heaps of pigeons and that's what they feed on. Great place. And what they taught us was that the city can be a place of nature. It's not like nature's over there away from the city. Nature's right here. We're part of nature, and they showed it to us. And so I thought, that's what the work is about. That's why the birds are, that's their nest. I made this nest, and I really love the otherness of this nest. Like I said, it's like obviously technological, but it's kind of natural, and it's got these hairs growing out of it. It's really healthy, and those birds are thriving there. And it was really important to me as well that the human had a kind of ambiguous sort of gender. It was that they're fluid, that they're kind of fine with not being opposite. They're somewhere in the middle, and it doesn't matter where they are, because they're really, really beautiful. What's really important is that they choose to care, to hold up this new space where we can think about nature differently. The next work is Sapling, and this work has got it all. It's all about boundaries, it's about otherness, it's about care, it's about found family. They all come together in this work called Sapling. Here they are at Flinders Street. And what we can see is another human supporting something, but they're supporting a hybrid creature, a plant-animal chimera. And what's important about this work is that it's a portrait of paternal care. I tend to do a lot of mother works because I know about mothering. I'm not saying I'm a good mother, but I know about it. I'm still learning about it. There's always something to learn. But I thought I want to do paternal care because it's not just women who care, and indeed men are really fantastic carers. I know a lot of them. And this is a portrait of a great carer. His name's Dennis Daniel, and he's in our studio. He's the collaborator of Peter's and mine, and we've worked together for about 25 years. And it was a chance to make a portrait of him. And this is his daughter on the left, Anouk, and his goddaughter on the right. And when Peter and I worked on this work, we did, and with Dennis, we looked a lot at all these works about body language. Like, that you read their body language. I don't have to say anything and you get it. And so what was great about it is that we did this pose where only dads can do this pose. Like, I never managed to put a kid on my shoulders. I never felt really, really good about it. I always felt like I'd topple over. But dads can do it, and they're really good at it. And there's a kind of closeness. There's an amazing closeness between them. Their heads are really close together. And I guess in a way I understand that a lot of people find his son kind of a bit special, because it's really hard for us to imagine a chimera between a human and a plant. But now that I've internalized that idea, that I know that we've all come from the same place and we're all made of the same genetic material, it's not hard at all. But we don't see it very often. The only example that I can think of is Groot. And that's done really well. And so where did this work come from? Well, it came from learning about personhood for plants. And I learned about it because of this tree in Berlin. So this tree is a work of art in itself. It's surrounded by about 6 petrol stations. It's surrounded by concrete, but it's survived. And it was meant to be taken down to make way for the huge multi-lane intersection in Berlin near Heide. And the Wurundjeri people said, no, we want to keep this tree. It's important to us. It's not a birthing tree or anything like that, but it's really important to us, and we want to keep it. And it was here before white people even got here. And so they worked really hard, and they got the council on board. And amazingly, this tree has been saved. It's still there. Like, it won. Like, this is such a feel-good sort of situation. And so I thought to myself, this is about intrinsic value. Like, this tree can just be there, turning light into oxygen, and just helping us combat the carbon dioxide of the cars, doing a good thing for us. But beyond that, it's just got a right to be there. And so this is the back of the work. So this work, sapling, is really connected to this country, to this tree in Berlin. And I'm really aware that this country where I live and work is a Wurundjeri country. And it's also the country where both my children were born. And there we have the question of how can we go forward together? And I think that care, compassion, and responsibility are central to this question. What can I do? I can take responsibility and make room for difference. And, sometimes it's hard to accept difference. You look at something like that and you think, oh my God, that's a slightly, it makes you feel a bit uneasy, and so you're pushed away from it. But then you come back and you think, oh, well actually, that's a great father, that's a beautiful relationship, and so you come back in. And what happens in the viewer, and what I hope happens, is that they go backwards and forwards. They think, oh, don't like it, but it's kind of interesting. I'm curious about it. Oh, but it's a bit grotesque, and it's beautifully made. Well, and so this place opens up in your brain, in your heart, for difference. And it's a time when we can come to our own conclusions, which is a rare time. We don't often have times like this, and that's the best thing about art. You can do this. It's not like I'm making, an ad or something, trying to get you to do something. Like, everybody comes up with their own response, and it's particular to them. Oh, kindred. Here she is in Canada. I'm really inspired by orangutans. And the reason why is because they're really great mothers. They stay with their children for 6 years. And they teach their children what to eat, where to find it, and when to find it. Like, they are like the super mums. They're single mums. They're incredible. And I always feel like I'm an orangutan mum. And indeed, when I try and get my kids to do something that I'd like them to do, like eat more protein or, something green or something like that, and they roll their eyes at me, I would say, but I'm an orangutan mum. And it always works. And so what we have here is a family. We have a chimera between a human and an orangutan. And her first child in her arms is even more human, and her second child on her back is completely human. And this family is very different from us. And they're kind of even different from each other. But they really work. And the longer we stay with this work, the more we realize that the work is also about connection. They have an incredible bond, and those children are thriving. The mother is strong and vulnerable. And the thing about her is that she can hold us in this maelstrom of really difficult ideas, because when I think about orangutans, I just feel shame and guilt. And when I feel shame and guilt, I just shut down. because I don't like it in my body. I don't like feeling it. I'm Catholic, so I'm really good at that. So I know how I don't like it. So, but with this work, you can look into her face, you can connect with her, and you can engage with these really strong ideas. And it's safe. It's safe because what we're doing is admiring the beauty in them and the connection in them and our connection to them. And so it's a way to encounter these ideas where you can have a transformational moment, and then this can be an impetus to act, to do something in the world about their plight. And at this point, I wanted to say something about skin colour. So I don't know if you've noticed, but all the human figures in my work reflect the diversity of human physiognomies. But my creatures tend to have my skin colour, and they even tend to have my eye colour as well. And that's because I'm pretty comfortable representing people as they are in the world. In fact, I really like it. I like mirroring the world. I like showing the world back to people. But if I construct a kind of monstrous chimera, I'm kind of really aware of the history of negatively equating black and brown people with animals, especially primates. So I'm happy to cast myself as an ape-like primate, but I can't really do that to someone else. Especially because traditionally monsters in stories tend to be killed off. They represent stuff that we have troubles with. Take Medusa. Oh, she gets raped by an elder, and so she gets turned into because of her beauty and her power, she has to be turned into an evil snake temptress that turns people into stone. And eventually, after she's turned lots of people into stone, she's going to come to a really bad end, and she's just going to end up being a weapon on someone's shield. She's going to be decapitated. So that's how we deal with feminine power, for example. So even nice girls like Medusa don't end up in a good way. So even if they're nice, if they're monsters, it's over. So they have to have a bit of me in them, and they will always be incredibly protected by me. And I really, really hate it when people kill monsters. I hate it. Because I love them.
Piccinini's hybrid mutant creatures will not be objectified. They mobilize the cultural history of negative differences and disrupt it. They resiliently endure and return our gaze, looking back at us, but also looking into us with eyes full of compassion and curiosity. Ooh, an earthling, a human. Their composure triggers a sense of defamiliarization or creative estrangement from the established norms and habits of thought. Remember, thinking is sexy? Remember people out there? Cool. The intensity of these others explodes the boundaries between human normality and otherness. They stand in their plenitude, looking at our lack. They are the ethical agents. Which takes us to the third and last zone of encounter between our work, which is the question of ethics, the affirmative ethics of care. I said at the beginning that we are not here to bring bad news and depress you, although I see people reaching out for their G&Ts desperately, but to inspire affirmative modes of apprehending our world, of activating ourselves to get into it, to steer the course of this planetary becoming and the current transformations, maybe to improve them, to make it go better. The answer is not to drop out, but to drop into this planetary condition, to construct together social horizons of hope. We need to learn to care otherwise. Piccinini's work challenges hierarchies and shifts boundaries. It is a subtle and theoretically informed record of the convulsive transitions that we're undergoing through our technologies, our environmental challenges, our socioeconomic disparities. Knowing that all of these breathtaking technological advances are challenging established habits of thinking. I will repeat this. Learning to think differently is much harder than we imagine, because it does require imagining otherwise. And the relationship between reason and imagination here needs to be reconfigured. Hence, a massive role, a major task for artists and art practice and art-driven research practice, and new alliances between philosophy and the arts, the old rhetorical skills of the classics, a new way of going about what we do when we think and think we must. We need to rethink the human and non-human, the posthuman, the transhuman in the era that is both the fourth industrial revolution and the sixth extinction. It is a case of and, not of either or. And what Piccinini produces for our benefit is a set of adequate representations of these ongoing mutations and what they mobilize in us. And what she pleads for is a trans-species form of care, empathy, compassion. I call it a posthuman affirmative ethics of care for the new planetary condition. Patricia.
The bridge. So this is it's a portrait of a transgenic human-pig chimera being held by a human. She's probably at the end of life, and she's being cared for in this very tender way. She's probably worked her whole life really hard, and now it's the end. And so what we see is, I think there's a kind of hierarchy there. You can still see that she doesn't have any clothes on like the human does. Like, when she's beautiful, she's got amazing hair and beautiful skin, but I mean, I guess there's a tenderness and a togetherness, but they're different. They come from different parts of the world, of our world. And it was commissioned by St. John's Hospital of Care in Bruges. And this is a picture that was taken in the 1700s of this hospital, but it was actually working, it started in the 1500s. And it was at the time of the Northern Renaissance. And people like Jan van Eyck and Hans Memling lived in Bruges. So the nuns and the monks spent a lot of money commissioning Hans Memling and Jan van Eyck to make these beautiful and ethereal altarpieces that they would take out and show the patients so that they could kind of transition into the next life. Because really, they couldn't really heal them from leprosy or cancer. They couldn't really do that. But they could help them in death. And it was always a place that was for poor people. If you were rich, the physician would come to your house. It's only poor people who went there, and you can see the museum is still exactly the same. They just don't have the beds. But you can see the beds. They put two people in the same bed. So if you were sick and you got next to somebody that was a bit sick, you would get their sickness as well. So it was a dangerous place to be, but it was a place of care. You would be cared for. And this is the bridge. It's permanently there. And I was given the opportunity to respond to one of their artworks. And I chose this one, which is anonymous, but it's from it's from the 17th century, 1600s, and it's the story of the Good Samaritan. And that's a really interesting story because the central tenet of the story is kind of forgotten. The Samaritans at that time were seen, at the time of Jesus, were seen as the outsiders, and they were scorned and looked down upon, and they were the uncultured ones. Like they were the dregs of society. And the story is that this man gets robbed and hurt and beaten up and left by the side of the road, and two of his own countrymen walk by him and they think, oh, he's just a vagabond, I'm not going to look at him. And then a Samaritan comes by and cleans him up and helps him and cures him and even brings him on his donkey, there he is there, to the inn and pays for him to be looked after for a few days. And this Samaritan does it even though he knows that he could not expect the same in return. And so what that is transcultural care. That's what they were advocating. Care for people that aren't your kin or even your culture. That's a good thing to do. And this work is trans-species care. And it also gestures towards how this kind of work, like the nuns and the monks, I mean, they put all their money in art, which is amazing, but they were undervalued, they were undersourced, they were underpaid. And that's the same today. Like all those service industries, especially old people's homes, they're just undervalued. And yeah, and that's why she looks a bit like a nun or a nurse. She's got this old-fashioned kind of clothing on. And the other reason why it's a pig is because Europe has a kind of fraught relationship with a lot of our domesticated animals. I think there's like 150 million pigs in industrial farms. You know, that's a lot of salami. So it's a big thing. How do we look after these creatures in a good way when they give us so much in return? But I wanted to put this picture in because when I found it, I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is the earliest figurative painting that we have found. And it's just been found recently in Indonesia. And amazingly, it's of a warty pig. And you can see the hands there. And when I saw that, I thought, we've always valued our relationships with other animals. We've always done that. That's why they become the subjects of our works of art. That's why we did it. They're important to us. And I'm just still doing it. I just wanted to make a really gentle and optimistic work. And I really hope that people can believe that there's a kind of genuine connection between these two older women. Because really, this is a portrait of the death that I want. This is how I want to die. I want to die in the arms of someone I care about and who cares about me. That's my perfect death. No fear of deaths. So this is another depiction of care, but instead of the human caring for the chimera, it's the chimera caring for the human. And it's inspired by the Australian humpback dolphin. And we only became aware that it was its own species about 2 decades ago, and there's only 2,500 to about 10,000. We don't actually know how many there are, and so it's kind of already on the route to extinction, which is just heartbreaking. And I just don't know about you, but I just think it's a really dumb name. Like, really, we have a humpback whale, and I don't really see the hump. Like, I mean, we could think of a better name, like, especially as it's dying out. Like, just give it some dignity. And so we're back into the maternal care because I'm really good at that. And I wanted this work to be tender and warm. And for me, this is enough reason for it to exist in the world. Because on the whole, I don't think we see enough of this. Like, it's part of all our lives, but we don't see it reflected back at us in a good way. And we don't help mothers. We don't help mothers mother. We just don't. I think we need to do more. And yeah, ironically, it's not really a subject matter for art, except for these religious images. This is maybe it's a Leonardo, we're not sure. But yeah, so this is the Virgin Mary and her son. And like all mothers, love here is unconditional and it's ever-flowing. And this is a really personal work for me because it's actually a portrait of my daughter before she became a teenager. Eventually, everybody in our studio ends up in an artwork. And for me, this is about how we love the things that we care about. It goes in that way. Like, you can love something, but that doesn't mean you're going to care for it. I love something, therefore I care. It's I care for something, therefore I love it, because you're invested. And the act of care is the love. And that's why I feel like this is meaningful. And I guess it's kind of a representation of how we expect Mother Nature to care for us. And amazingly, up until now, Mother Nature has been there for us. It's given everything we've wanted. It's incredible, really, when you think about it. For humans, nature's always been there for us. But perhaps it's time to think about a more reciprocal kind of care. And that might be more appropriate. This is the last work. It's The Rescuers. And it's the most realistic work I've made. And what we can see are two Australian teenagers, and they're holding a koala that's been burnt, and she's got bandages on her, and they're holding her in this sort of makeshift bed, which is a washing basket. And it actually comes from a TV moment. Like, there was a moment during the 2019 bushfires where the whole world saw koalas bandaged up in these washing baskets. And I was really impressed by that. You know, like, we did lose 1 billion creatures, but we just didn't let them go. We really wanted to look after them. Like, we cared about them. And like a lot of these koalas, they were never gonna make it, but we looked after them. And I thought, that's worthy of making a work about. I want this in our lives, to remember that we lost them, but we didn't want it to happen. That's not how it goes. We do care. And the other TV moment that really fit into this work was this segment on Toni Doherty. And like, she took off her t-shirt and ran into like a smouldering fire and rescued this koala and gave it water and brought it to be looked after. And when I saw that, I just thought, I want our Prime Minister to have her values. I want him to be like, I want them to be like her. And so I conceived of this work, and again, it's like warm and positive, because like fear is not a useful motivator. And that fight or flight thing, which I often really feel when I think about nature, like it's not sustainable and it doesn't feel good. And I guess it's kind of naive to like we're in the middle of an Anthropocene and things are dying all around us. It's not like this is how the world really is. I mean, it is in this occasion, but it's not actually how it is. But it is the world as it could be. And that's what I called speculative optimism, because it envisions positive futures as a means of moving towards them. In 2050, koalas are going to be extinct in New South Wales. And I believe that we need hope more than we need fear. And the path to hope is through care. And what can I do? As artists, we wonder about our efficacy. And I don't think it's about reducing our footprint to nothing. I think we do need to travel with our shows. But it's about making sure that things we do are about something. I don't want to live in a world without hospitals or university or research. If the internet has taught us anything, it's that ideas and images do have effect. I want to go forward with other species, knowing that we are not the same, but that we are connected and that we care. Sorry.
Yes, we need to generate a planetary practice of care and to be practical and quick, efficient about it. So let's apply a golden, fundamental philosophical rule, and the rule is, get a life. Accept the need for an ethical bond between us, humans and non-humans and otherwise human, without giving in to fears and negativity. A posthuman affirmative ethics of care is what Piccinini also calls speculative optimism. Isn't that wonderful? It is an ongoing project, a praxis, which challenges us to understand better, stretch our imagination, open our hearts, if there is room in our hearts. So let us settle in the immanence of just a grounded planetary life, which will have been ours on this damaged but gorgeous planet, in the company of many, not all of them human. Let us celebrate our inexhaustible capacity to become, our collective power to differ within ourselves and between ourselves. We can resist fear and sadness and construct different paths of becoming, but this transformative path can only be enacted collectively, together as earthlings, the embodied and embedded subjects of planetary posthuman times. Shared concern and affirmative ethics open upon a deeper wisdom about what it means to change, about what it is exactly that one knows when one is facing momentous changes in unfamiliar territories. One knows then that life on Earth lives on, regardless of human pretensions and expectations, and that we can only intervene in this planetary complexity by acting collectively in affirmative, generative ways. We, who are not one and the same, but are in this planetary life together. Thank you. We did it. We did it. It was fantastic. That really worked.
Thank you. Give it up for Rosi and Patricia. Woo! Come on, Melbourne. Wow, okay, if you're like me, you don't know whether to lie down, exhausted, explode with excitement, with ideas, with thoughts that you can share, talk to with friends, family, communities, etc. Next week is International Women's Day, and my goodness, have we seen two extraordinary, wild, wonderful women with power, with passion, with intelligence, but more importantly, combining that and holding it with vulnerability, with openness, with the willingness to share with us insights into their work and their sort of innermost fears and concerns. And what's so special is that you've noticed that they've come out together. This is what, this is a gendered position here. It's not, the single person show. This is a shared, acknowledging each other's work, recognising and reflecting on how they inform each other. And I think that kind of collective care is at the heart of really what we're looking at with Planetary Civics. So if you're interested in Planetary Civics, there's lots of QR codes. There's one up here. There's events happening in the next 24 hours, but if you register, then you can get the recording if, the middle of the night is a bridge too far. As part of the collective care, RMIT Culture and the team here, in the wonderful Capitol Theatre have been fantastic. So thank you so much to that team. We've got the team from Planetary Civics around the world who've been working really hard, as well as here at RMIT with all of the different activities. So thank you very much, and also to Tim Marshall for formally launching this event, and to all of the guests that we've had. So I'm just going to call Rosi and Patricia out for one more round of applause, and this is the first time they've ever spoken in public like this together. Please give them one more really warm round of applause. Rosi, Patricia.
We must be the coolest Italian Melbournians right now. Thank you.
Safe travels, everyone. And Naomi Stead, Professor Naomi Stead, did a lot of work to make this happen. Wasn't able to be here tonight, but we thank her as well. Take care, everyone, and thank you so much. Thank you.